Thank you very much for coming tonight, everyone. This is going to be I'm really excited about tonight's presentation entitled Plug-in Solar Power for Your Home on Cheap, or for solar power your home for cheap. Excuse me, I stumbled over that one. But this is a really cool topic. The whole balcony solar movement took off like mad in Europe. It started in the US in all places in Utah. And there were a number of states who this year passed regulations to make this legal. So I'm not going to steal any more of Carrington's thunder. She'll get to that in a moment. But I will say that I'm glad that our state of Maryland passed a law making balcony or plug-in solar legal. And so we're one of the places where within, no, I guess it already went into effect, is now able to, folks are now able to take advantage of this sort of approach to solar power, which is great. I'll start us out with a prayer, and then I'll introduce Carrington to the group. Creator God, thank you for the gift of the sun. Thank you for the light that wakes the morning and the warmth that stirs the earth. Thank you for the ability to power our homes in a way similar to the way that our plants make food for all of us. Your rays remind me that I am alive and part of this great world. May I walk today with a bright spirit and a grateful heart. Amen.
Amen.
So this evening we have Carrington Howard. Carrington is a climate advocacy coordinator for the Southern Alliance of Clean Energy. She works closely with city governments, municipal electric utilities, and community leaders to advance equitable clean energy policies and programs in Tennessee. Carrington also enjoys educating and equipping others across the Southeast to become clean energy leaders in their own communities. She currently serves on the board of the Tennessee Solar Energy Association. So we're very glad to have Carrington with us. She'll speak to us about this plug-in solar movement, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So Carrington, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'm really excited to be here with you all tonight. Mark extended the invitation early this year in, I think, February. So it's taken some time, but really excited to be here, and I'll go ahead and get started. Okay, can you all see this first slide okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Let's get started. So, as Mark mentioned, my name is Carrington Howard. I am the Climate Advocacy Coordinator for the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. A little bit about our organization. We are a nonprofit clean energy advocacy organization that is based mainly in the Southeast. Our work extends to the states of North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee. We've been at this work for about 41 years now, and plug-in solar is definitely new to us as it is to the rest of the country, but we have a long history of promoting responsible and equitable energy choices to ensure safe and healthy communities throughout the entire Southeast. And as I understand it, you all are all from different parts of the country, so hopefully the information I share relates to many of you here. SACE, we typically shorten the name to SACE. We're really excited about plug-in solar specifically because it is a more accessible form of clean energy while we advocate for all sizes and all types of renewable energy and energy efficiency. We are really excited that plug-in solar is cheaper and more accessible. And that is why now we're working with lawmakers across the country and various researchers to scale plug-in solar. So this is a quick agenda of what I will be covering. I'll dive into what plug-in solar actually is. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as balcony solar. They are the same thing. I'll go into some of the benefits, the cost, and the savings that a household could see if they were to install plug-in solar. And then I'll share more about how the technology actually works, and then we'll go into some of the legislative wins that we've seen across the country in the last year or two. So, the big question, what is plug-in solar? So, plug-in solar is a small plug-in solar system that is typically under 2,000 watts. It can be plugged into a standard outdoor wall outlet, and essentially it offsets a portion of a household's energy consumption. What is really different and cool about plug-in solar is the size, the price point, and the simplicity of the systems compared to rooftop solar. As I mentioned, it's more accessible and it's a lot cheaper. With a rooftop system, oftentimes you have to invite a solar installer to come to your home multiple times, someone who has certain certifications and can work on your roof safely, drill holes, and install the actual system. Plug-in solar systems are a lot easier. You don't necessarily have to invite a professional out to your house in order to do the work. They're quite lightweight, and I truly believe most people with a bit of training will be able to set up a plug-in solar system into their homes by themselves. They're typically a lot more accessible to renters and apartment dwellers than a rooftop solar system and far cheaper. We all know plug-in solar compared to rooftop solar is pretty expensive. Depending on the incentives that you have access to in your states, rooftop solar can be tens of thousands of dollars. And plug-in solar, you're looking at well below 10,000, most likely below $5,000 for an entire system. And the payback period is a lot shorter, which I know a lot of people love. So, as Mark mentioned, plug-in solar, balcony solar became really big in Europe. About 10 years ago is when the technology began to take off. Germany, specifically, it's really popular there. There are about 5 million systems that we know of balcony solar units in the country. Sometimes this number, people will refer to there being a million systems, and that is because regulations and bureaucratic bodies are just now catching up. Recently, the German government in the last couple of years has asked for people to register their systems. About a million are officially registered, but we know there are many more millions that are not registered. The people of Germany, most likely apartment dwellers in Germany, have taken this for themselves and kind of run with it. And it's been really successful and really safe there, which is really wonderful to hear. Just in the last couple of months, we believe that about 64,000 new units have been added in Germany. I know I'll speak for myself. I would love to see that sort of progress and that sort of growth here in the US in the next couple of years. I've got this picture over to the right here just to emphasize how easy and accessible it is to get plug-in solar systems in Germany. Someone can walk into an IKEA or a home department store and pay anywhere from $350 US dollars for a plug-in solar system. Take it home, set it up, and they'll be good to go. Once again, I hope one day we can do that here in the US. But it's going to take a lot of us and a lot of education for sure. So some of the benefits of plug-in solar I've already mentioned, but I do really want to emphasize how simple and easy these systems are in comparison to rooftop systems. They are portable, so they can be moved from home to home. They also can be placed in a place that is the most convenient for you. A sunny area in your yard, on a balcony, or even on the side of a fence, whichever works best for you. I've mentioned the cost, it's a lot more affordable, but also energy affordability in general is a big topic of conversation in the US right now. And plug-in solar systems are a cost-effective way to reduce your utility bill. We like to say that they are sort of an energy efficiency device. They're not necessarily going to offset 100% of your energy consumption at home, but they definitely have the ability to reduce your
Oh, I got
electricity.
him.
Cost and savings, the big question on everyone's minds, I'm sure. So this is an example of a typical 800-watt system in the state of South Carolina. These numbers don't necessarily apply across the board, but they're a strong example of what you could possibly see if you were to get your own plug-in solar system. Upfront costs can be anywhere from $700 up to $1,500 for an 800-watt kit. So that would include something like two solar panels, a microinverter, and a set of cables in order to connect the system to your home. The daily output could be anywhere from 3 kilowatt hours up to 6.8 kilowatt hours, depending on how much sunshine you're getting. And this would be per day in a state like South Carolina that has quite a bit of sun. Annual savings around $175, which could be close to 1,100 kilowatt hours per year is the calculation there. And then a payback period, as I mentioned, is around 6 years, which is a lot less than rooftop solar, which is typically 6 to 15 plus years. 800 watts is not necessarily something many of us can connect to in our minds pretty easily. So I've got this fun graphic on the bottom that shares what sort of appliances could be powered by an 800-watt system on a perfect sunny day. I'll give you all time to look at that real quick. Okay, moving on. How plug-in solar works. It's honestly pretty simple. In a typical plug-in solar kit, you're going to have, as I mentioned, solar panels, a microinverter, and connector cables to attach the system to your home. The solar panels will convert the sunlight into electricity. The microinverter converts that power so it can be safely used in your home. And then the device is plugged into a standard outdoor wall outlet. From there, your home will actually use the solar first in order to offset your home energy consumption. Plug-in solar legislation. I see moving quite fast here, but we'll have lots of time for questions after. As Mark mentioned, plug-in solar legislation is growing rapidly in the US, which we are so excited to see. Our friends at BrightSaver have this amazing tracker of plug-in solar legislation across the US, and they update it daily. I'll be sure to share that resource with you all later on. But the main goal of plug-in solar legislation is to empower people to take home energy efficiency into their own hands. And the goal is actually to ensure that people aren't necessarily wading through a lot of red tape in order to access these systems. We've seen legislators and governors in various states across the country advocate for plug-in solar because of the energy affordability crisis that we're all going through right now. This is a chance to empower households to do what they can to lower their electricity bills while our electric utilities are maybe making decisions that are keeping our electricity bills pretty high. So lawmakers see it as an opportunity to ensure that their constituents are getting a safer, more affordable home, which is what we all need right now. There are about 35 state legislatures who have introduced plug-in solar bills across the country. 10 of those states have actually passed plug-in solar bills. And as Mark mentioned, Maryland is one of those states, which is really exciting. We hope to see this number go up as states reconvene next year in 2027. And to give you a general overview of what this legislation typically entails, every state is different. I'll say South Carolina introduced a plug-in solar bill, and it was mainly focused on homeowners associations and what they could and could not regulate. Other states like New York and Utah are far more focused on making this process easier for people who want to acquire plug-in solar systems. Typically, that means no interconnection agreement, no interconnection fee with the utility, and no utility approval required. Of course, there has been some pushback from the utilities with some of these bills passing, mostly because they have safety concerns or they're ultimately worried about the amount of money that they will be able to keep their business running with. At the end of the day, we believe plug-in solar systems are so simple and safe and small enough that people should not have to put out exorbitant fee amounts and pay them to their utility in order to have access to this sort of device. So this is a high level sort of explanation of some of the regulations and safety conversations that we're having about plug-in solar in this country right now. I'll share that there are systems out there that are UL 7041 certified. UL is the laboratory specifically that does certification for electricity and technological systems. And then recently we've gotten actual UL 3700 certification conversations happening for the entire plug-in solar system. We expect by December of this year to have more guidance on what that looks like. And specifically, UL 3700 certification would include potentially a GFCI specific, I guess you could say, it's not a holder, but it's the thing that your plug goes into is the best way I can explain it. In addition to fully certified panels and inverters. The other regulation people are talking about right now is also our National Electric Code. I do want to share and give some caution that there are manufacturers out there right now that will claim that their systems are UL 3700 certified. No systems are fully UL 3700 certified. So if you find something online or you hear about it through a group chat or neighbors that, there's this cool system, it's fully certified, you should buy it, I caution you to be wary of people who are making those sort of claims. That being said, there are systems that have components that are UL 7041 certified, and those are available to be purchased and bought on the market. We recently released a plug-in solar safety white paper that I can share with you all after this webinar. It basically goes into this conversation we're having about plug-in solar safety versus generator safety and how the regulations on these topics seem to be completely different. The Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, we are advocating for plug-in solar to be completely legalized and for there to be limited barriers because we do believe that it is so safe. And we are encouraging others to share our white paper with their lawmakers and with the decision makers in their local communities. So, what's next? Legislation is needed. We encourage everyone to talk to your representatives next session if you don't have a plug-in solar bill already moving through your legislature. And as I said, we encourage everyone to share a safety white paper with those who are making decisions about this topic. We also think if you're in a state that has legalized plug-in solar or you're just someone who wants to be a pioneer, that you should test out a system. We have connections to a manufacturer called Craftstrom, who does plug-in solar systems here in the United States that are fully UL 7041 certified. And if you feel like this is the right time to get a system, feel free to reach out to us and we can connect you with them and with the system. Also, if you don't have a bill that is fully passed or a law in your state, there's the option to connect with your local utility to talk about a potential pilot project. We think it is extremely important for utilities to be a part of this process and for them to be on board with the growth of plug-in solar. And in order for that to happen, they also need to get comfortable with these systems. Last but not least, tell your friends, plug-in solar is the first real solar option for renters and apartment dwellers. And we are so excited to see a technology like this growing. But it's going to require a lot of education and word of mouth for this sort of device and information about this device to grow. Okay, and that is all I have for today. Thank you so much, everyone. This is my contact information. Feel free to reach out at any point if you have questions.
Thank you very much, Carrington. That was wonderful. It's great to hear about all of that. I'll tell you that for those who are thinking about reaching out to their legislators, this is the time to do it because most state legislatures go into session early in the calendar year. Right now, they're actually at a time where they're pulling together information on what's going on. I was happy that about this time last year, I had heard a podcast that talked about plug-in solar in Germany and the fact that it was legal in Utah. I immediately reached out to one of my state legislators, Lauren Charkoudian, who I knew would be interested in this sort of thing, only to hear from a friend who works for Lorig who wrote back and said, yes, she has already drafted a bill for this. So this is the time to get going on that sort of thing. Um, we have a number of great questions that are coming in. They're in the chat. Let me start with some folks. Bruce has his hand raised.
I thought your presentation was wonderful, and I'm going to be sharing it with people through our Presbytery newsletter. So thank you. Question I have for you is this. You mentioned that IKEA has been promoting this in Europe. They are the largest furniture store in Europe, and so if they do it, that has a huge impact. We have 50 IKEA stores in the United States. Has there been any conversation with them about their providing these products to encourage people to do it?
As far as I know, not just yet. Germany has the benefit of, there have been advocates who have been working on moving plug-in solar to be more popular for the past 10 years. And we're just about a couple of years in right now. I do believe one day IKEA might be a provider, or Home Depot or Lowe's might be a provider of those systems, but it's definitely going to take some time, and specifically that UL 3700 certification before, we see the big box stores providing that sort of option.
Well, Home Depot is very supportive of Trump, so I'm not going to hold my breath for them, but Lowe's might be a better possibility. Um, but I would love it. IKEA, as you may know, is a charity. So if they profit from any of this, they in turn give it to causes like the United Nations to help in developing countries. So anyway, I will be chatting with the ones that I'm familiar with. I was just in one 2 days ago. So
Amazing. Thank you for your question.
on to their website, and I see there's information on there. Now it's just a question of them, you know, moving it along. Do you have a map showing the status of this in different states?
I can absolutely share with you the tracker with the chart that I shared. There's an accompanying map from BrightSaver that I can share in the follow-up resources.
I'm in New York State and I know they have passed the legislation, but it's a slow process of getting it all implemented. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I'll go through and feed you some of the questions, and one of them actually ties into something else that is a crossover with larger solar systems. A number of states have reverse metering systems and so forth. And so, here in Maryland, we have reverse metering. So on the large solar system we have on our home, we're frequently selling back to the grid and literally watch the meter ticking backwards. It's digital, so it doesn't literally spin backwards, but it still is nice to see the numbers go in reverse sometimes. But a question came in along these lines, and you might speak to the issue of reverse metering, but the question that David Kepley had is, can I assume that if we did this in our homes, that it would not produce enough electricity to sell back to the grid?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. And I'll say most legislation that has been passed prevents selling any excess generation back to the grid. And really, the hope with these systems is that you are consuming as much of the solar as possible in order to offset your own home use.
Thanks. We have one from Jeff. Is there a quote virtuous principled company that you can recommend for plug-in solar units?
Sure. I personally and our organization recommends a company called Craftstrom. I'm happy to share more about their systems and the work they do. They're based out of Texas, here in the US.
And do they make their systems in the US? Good. That's another question that came up.
That is a great question. I am unsure specifically if they make all of their parts in the US or if they're shipping some of them over. So I can get that answer to you within the week, though.
Great, thanks. Jim says, I might need an extension cord to the fence where I'd put the panel. Is that feasible?
Yes, that is feasible. And I'm trying to see, we do have, okay, there's a friend of mine from Nashville who has his own system set up on his fence, and he said he might be joining here, but I don't think he's here today. That is certainly possible. If you're going to set up something farther away from your house, the likeliness of needing an extension cord is quite high. And there's the ability to connect them in a series.
And I'll just point out that if you're going to do that, you do need to be careful to make sure that the extension cord is rated to well above what your need is, because this is going to be what's considered a continuous application rather than usual discontinuous application that you usually have on extension cords. So um, Jeff also asked, are there any house electrical system risks?
So, not necessarily. There's not necessarily a risk of any overheating of your wires or anything of that sort. I do recommend if you're someone who is concerned about, perfect setup to invite an inspector to come out and look at your electrical box and make sure everything's set up in a way that they're comfortable with and you are comfortable with.
Yeah, and working with electric vehicles, I'll say one of the other things is having an electrician come out and install a new outlet just in case.
Mhm.
If you don't know how old it is, it's old.
Yeah, and I'll share, these systems are on a dedicated circuit, so
Right.
that's why we specifically believe in the safety of them working just how they're supposed to.
Hmm. You had that chart that was talking about legislation, and Craig asked, what does active mean on that chart?
That is a great question. So active means it is currently moving through the legislature. It hasn't necessarily passed one chamber or the other or fully been signed into law by the governor just yet.
All right, Jim asked another question. Could I mount the panel on a movable frame and shift it during the day to avoid shade? Parentheses, Jim says he's retired.
Jim, what's lovely about these systems is as long as it's plugged in and you're able to lift and move however you want, you can move it wherever and however you'd like to. They're extremely lightweight. So you would have the ability to set that up if you were to build it.
Great. And Lucy asked, white paper, what is that? So what is this white paper document that y'all have?
Yeah, so this white paper, our executive director and our former distributed resources manager worked on this full report going into the safety of plug-in solar versus some of the safety regulations that we have on generators. As we know, there are pretty much no regulations on the generators we can go out and buy in a store as backup power, but there are increased safety risks that have been documented over the years. So the white paper specifically compares the two and makes the claim that ultimately plug-in solar is facing a lot more hoops for regulation, but the safety risk is not nearly as much as what a typical generator would be.
Great, thanks. Um, Claudia asks, how long does a plug-in solar system last? And going to the certifications, when do these higher level certifications, the UL listings and such, become active?
So to answer your first question, solar panels are all working pretty well these days. So it'll be the same as a rooftop system, about 20 years is what we expect. That being said, plug-in solar is fairly new, so we haven't seen that come to fruition, but we expect 20 years to be the answer to that. And for the certification, some of those higher level ones, as I said, there will be a full publishing of UL 3700 at the end of this year, but we do expect maybe 5 to 7 years to go by before that certification process is fully complete.
Craig had another question in addition to if there are any U.S. manufacturers. Is Are non-U.S. sources subject to the tariffs or special taxes that may have been put in place?
That is a great question. I assume so. I don't have a clear, direct answer or example of that just yet, but I would assume they're all facing the same hurdles that other companies are facing.
All right, moving into the legislative side, Wendy says, I'm in California and did state advocacy on plug-in solar yesterday.
Yay!
Thanks, Wendy. Um, what are your best talking points that you've gained traction with in your experience?
Hmm. So I think best talking points is I mostly just share about, energy affordability is the number one topic that constituents are talking to their legislators about right now when it comes to just general affordability. And at the end of the day, these systems don't require, utilities to spend extra money. They don't require people to make a large investment, but they have a really great return for all kinds of people. If you live in an apartment, if you live in a home, if you're elderly, if you're younger, if you have an EV, if you're someone who's never really thought about solar before, this is an option that is accessible for everyone. So I found that to be really helpful in our conversations with legislators. Just also the idea that a lot of people are asking for plug-in solar right now. And oftentimes legislators want to help out their community when they're all asking for something.
Great, thanks. Craig has a couple more questions that actually tie together. First was, is there any limit on how many systems are safe for a single home? I think that actually means how big a system. But in a follow-up that ties into this, how about charging a battery system instead of exporting excess to the grid?
Yeah, so to answer your first question, we recommend keeping a system below 2400 watts. So that would be, I want to say, a series of 6 different solar panels all put together. And that's just for safety and regulation reasons. Most of the legislation that is being passed, there's a cap at 2000 watts or 1200 watts. So you'd most likely have to stay under that number anyway. To answer your question about the battery, there are a number of plug-in solar companies who also sell batteries, and they do provide the option for you to connect your system to a battery and charge it up instead of using it for the rest of your home or to go to be used for your appliances.
Yeah, and in fact, a lot of those batteries can also be used as portable batteries. So
They
there's
sure
some cool
can.
things you can do with that. Um, Curtis makes a comment. In addition, Aldi has a system that they market widely in Europe. So I think there are a lot of German stores that sell these at this point.
That's wonderful. And next time you all are in Germany, please, if you come across a system in a store, share it with me.
David Kepley asked if we can get a copy of your presentation. And of course, we talked about further resources. So the video will be available for presentation as well as any resources that you provide to us, Carrington. So,
Fantastic. Yep,
so
the
yeah,
slides will be shareable.
great. Um, uh, does Craftstroom sell any systems with batteries?
They do. Crashtrim has a couple of different kits. So you can get the solar panels, the microinverter, and the cables, in addition to a battery, in addition to something they call a smart meter, which allows you to track the system throughout the day on your phone.
Great. Claudia asked, is there a good reason to wait for the higher UL rating to go through before purchasing a plug-in solar system?
Hmm. If your state has fully legalized plug-in solar, or if your utility is already, conducting a pilot program and allowing people in their service territory to do plug-in solar, they've cleared the way for consumers to add these plug-in solar systems to their homes. So while UL is going to take their time and develop these certifications, there's not necessarily a reason for the consumer to wait. That sort of certification is more for legislators and regulators to feel more comfortable with the systems.
Craig says, I see none of the Southeast states in the list. There should be lots of sun there. What are the barriers to considering this in those states? And a follow on, is there any federal legislation pending?
So, as far as I know, no federal legislation pending. And to the question about the Southeast, I was on a webinar earlier today where I spoke about some of the hurdles that we're having for solar in general here in the Southeast. We've got a very unique energy market in that we have vertically integrated utilities that are regulated monopolies. And for us, that means that they have a lot of control over how much solar we have and what our solar policies look like. In addition, there are a number of legislators who are not favorable to solar here in the Southeast. So for those reasons, we've got a bit of an uphill battle. But like I said, South Carolina, North Carolina, there are states who are working in this area. And we hope in the next couple of years that we'll get there.
Yeah, and in fact, Mindy put in a link to where solar stands in North Carolina and a template for hints. I'm sure, in fact, that template, the information is, that is provided in Plug-in Solar USA, as well as your organization and others can provide lots of good stuff for speaking with your legislators.
Absolutely. And we have our own resources, a couple of one-pagers and handouts if you all want to bring those with you in your meetings with your lawmakers.
Excellent. Curtis says one state law that was passed in Utah, a red state, and in effect created another type of generation category. Their safety analysis showed it to be safe. I haven't read SACE's white paper, but it does reference that state law as it would be a good example for state legislators in red states to examine.
Yep. So the really incredible thing about the Utah law, which was first, is that it was bipartisan and it was unanimous. So everyone of all different, political affiliations and thoughts believe that plug-in solar is a really great thing for all of us. And so our hope is that other states will, of course, adopt what Utah has passed, and hopefully there will be bipartisan support from state legislators across the country.
Oh, and here's a good question. How do these systems stand up to cold and wind?
Okay, fairly well. I'll say we have plugin set up at our office in Knoxville through a pilot with our local utility. And as you know, Knoxville is like just right by the mountains, and it's standing up pretty well. They've gone through a couple of seasons now, those in Utah and those, farther out in Tennessee. As far as I know, we've had no trouble with our systems when it comes to cold and wind, but I think we'd probably need a case study on that from others who have experience and use these systems for longer.
Yeah, and let's not forget Germany is a lot farther north than most of the United States and certainly than the Southeast states.
Yep, and they're hanging off of balconies over in Germany and standing up pretty well, so we're pretty confident, but it's always great to have more research.
Great. We made it through the list of questions. Some great questions, folks. Anyone have any other questions for Carrington? At this point, if you want to just unmute and have a discussion, that'll be fine.
Yeah, I got one.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm just thinking about how whether I could use one or not. And I think one important thing is to have an external outlet on your house, right? So I have one that's wired directly to my breaker box.
Hmm.
Will that work?
Yes, it should. If I would encourage you to contact the specific manufacturers of the system you end up buying, because they're going to have a better understanding of their
Right.
system specifically. But you should be okay based on the connection.
It's a 110 outlet, so
Okay.
okay. It's behind the meter, right? It's part of my house system. Okay.
Exactly.
And one thing to remember, folks, is, you think, well, probably want to stick with 110 systems. They don't use 110 in Europe.
Yep. Yeah.
So they're using 220 systems exclusively over there. You can have a good bit of power coming in on these. Bruce, did you have another question?
I always think it's helpful to work with community colleges. When we had our EV system, the charger installed at our home, we reached out to the teacher at the community college who was training the electricians. And so he came to our house with students to learn how to do it. And in turn, the students then could take it all over the place. So if you're at all hesitant about doing it beyond just a self-help kind of thing, but want a professional, go to a community college and ask the teacher to do it. And then they in turn usually bring students along. And then it just has a ripple effect as far as more and more people will make use of it.
Absolutely. That's going to be incredibly important. This technology is fairly new. The idea of it is pretty new to most electricians. And so when they see a system or approach a system, oftentimes they understand how it works and the actual idea, but they've never seen it before. So the more people, the more professionals we can educate, and the more people we can give hands-on experience to, the better.
And of course, every church should have this. So
And in fact, that was a question that Craig just tossed in. What about installing at a church? Are there any special considerations for non-residential setups?
Special considerations, no. As I mentioned, we've got plugin set up at our office in Knoxville. I personally can't think of any particular changes you would have to make. Other than, the number of panels that you'd probably install is going to be a lot more than what you'd install on your balcony at home. Judy, yes.
I live on Hilton Head Island in South Carolina. Two things. How is the salt affecting those units? And if they're portable, then if we have a hurricane evacuation, we could bring those inside, correct? Because they're light enough to do that.
They absolutely are. So yes, you can move them inside. You could bring them with you in the car. They're typically small enough to put in a trunk and transport. As far as the salt, I don't have any knowledge of that issue specifically. I'm happy to ask around with our friends in other coastal areas.
And you said, so South Carolina, you're in process with as far as working with the state?
We are, yes.
All right. So will we, like I have Santee Cooper is my power source. So, and I'm sure there's monopolies and situations where they wouldn't want that to come about.
Yeah, there's definitely been some pushback by many of the utilities in the Southeast and across the country, which is why, we're working with our lawmakers at the legislative level to educate them and help them understand what the actual concerns are versus maybe what some um, outside outside action against plug-in solar might be.
Thank you.
Yep.
Curtis.
Yeah, I just have one comment and two quick questions. The comment is that at this point in time where demands for electricity are rising all over the country, this seems to me to be a good time to strike. And at the same time, it provides permission in areas where solar is not widely accepted for it to become more mainstream. So the benefit is that people that experiment with it will tell their friends. And I just have two questions. The first is there enough of a track record in Utah and other states that have adopted this to find out which companies have penetrated that market? Craftstrom's one product. There are others, but I don't know. And number two, the systems have to get to the point where that you just plug them in. That's the way it is in Germany, to my understanding. And then fiddling with the box, your electrical panel is not required. And the Utah experience, at least that's what I put in the chat, was such that the safety concerns of having up to a 1200-watt system plugged in are essentially zero to people that might have backfeed into the grid. So an awful one. I guess that's one question and maybe two comments. Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much, Kurt. It's great to see you. So many of these laws that have been passed are fairly new within really the past couple of months. And so I don't necessarily think there's been enough data on the companies within these states who are providing people with systems to have a big track record and a lot of data to give us. That being said, as you mentioned, Germany plug-in solar is really proliferated around the country, and people feel very confident about it and safe about it. Our electrical systems in our homes are a bit different, so that is a consideration that we have to keep in mind as we compare the two. But definitely, the safety considerations and the safety conversation we're having about plug-in solar is a little overblown at the moment. But I believe that is a hurdle we can get over with more education.
Craig just added a question, a comment and question. I'm very surprised at the failure to pass the legislatures in Washington, Oregon, and New Mexico. What can we learn from those states?
That's a great question. I'll be honest, I've not paid too much attention to how plug-in solar has been moving on the West Coast, in that part of the country. That being said, the utilities in that region are very powerful, and have a very specific idea of how they believe plug-in solar needs to move. And so it's possible that utility interference into the process change things. It's also possible that it's just a legislative hurdle. Sometimes other bills are prioritized and plug-in solar bills fall to the wayside. So we'll have to look into that and see.
I saw that Susie had her hand up also.
I just had a question about the recycling options. I don't know much about recycling solar panels. I recently noticed that in North Carolina, we do have someplace, I think, I can't remember what it is now, but I think we do have at least one place. So I'm just thinking ahead, when we start getting all these things, what are at the end of life of these panels, what are we supposed to do with them?
Thank you, Susie. That is a really great question and amazing that you're looking ahead. So the great thing is that decommissioning for these systems is most likely going to be fairly easy. We don't have to worry about pulling stakes out of the ground or anything like that. I do hope in 20 plus years there are more recycling facilities for solar panels, and that we can think about that process as something that is easy to do and accessible to everyone, rather than a far off idea that we have to contemplate.
I think it's important to accent what you just said. How many things do we buy are guaranteed for 20 or 25 years? These are, I mean, this is amazing.
I will say, having looked at solar panel recycling discussions previously, that the EPA says that there are programs out there for recycling solar panels already, and that they can EPA states you can recycle up to 90%, no, sorry, 90% or more of the materials in solar panels. So it's more just a matter of finding the places to do it and getting it to them. So some areas may not have as many of those. It may be a little more challenging to get them there. But as you're saying, Carrington, in 20 years, hopefully there'll be a whole lot more robust recycling system in place.
I hope so. Definitely something we'll have to advocate for.
Are there any other questions? Well, in that case, Carrington, thank you very much for all of this, and we look forward to continuing to share this information with the people who weren't here to watch it live, as well as all of your resources. This is a great move forward, and I tell you, considering that this time last year Utah was the only state where it was legal, to have that many states already have legalized it at this point is a real step in the right direction. So this is great. Mindy, you want to tell us all about what's coming up next?
Yes, I do. Let me make sure that's open. Okay. I will. All right. So I just want to let everyone know about our next couple of webinars coming up. We try to do something every month, and our next one is coming up on Wednesday, September 8th. Reverend Andrew Black, who is on our steering committee, he's located in New Mexico. And also the Presbyterians for Earth Care moderator, the Reverend Courtney Wilcox, along with some other faith leaders from other faiths. Took a trip up to the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, I'd say about a month ago. And they are going to be leading a webinar on their adventures with creation and culture in the Arctic area. And an article was just done on them by the Presbyterian Church and published, and I have seen it on Facebook. You can probably also find it on the PCUSA website. The Presbyterian News Service just did an interview with them this week. So that will be our September webinar. And then September, October, and November, we are doing climate ambassador training. Climate ambassador training was put together by Blessed Tomorrow, which is an ecumenical faith-based organization. And they have created some for different denominations. There is a Presbyterian curriculum, and Jane Laping, who has for years and years been very involved with Presbyterians for Earth Care and been on our steering committee. And at one point was our coordinator, will be leading. She's been trained to lead that training. And so it's going to be over 4 different Sundays that are kind of spread out. And in that training, which is free, you'll learn how to talk about climate change with confidence, explore real solutions, and take action in your community. And I think probably next week we will be opening up the registration for that. So that's pretty exciting and something new for us. And this is just a reminder that we do all of our webinars for free. So feel free to go to our website if you feel so moved and make a donation. And with that, I will turn it back to Mark.
Thank you very much, Mindy. And again, thank you, Carrington, for a wonderful webinar tonight. Let me close this in prayer. Creator God, thank you for creative and helpful people. Thank you for those who are working together to take care of your creation. Thank you for these wonderful approaches on dealing with solar power in an easily applicable and affordable way, and how we can all make it happen throughout the country. Be with us as we go about our daily lives for the next month, and get back together again next month for the next webinar. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Thanks, everybody.